So good afternoon. My name is Ivo Wubbles. I'm one of the founders of Engine Software. As he said, at the moment we're the oldest developer studio in Holland. We exist for almost 20 years, and that's in this business quite a long time. I'll tell you a bit about the company. It was in the early 90s, so pretty old for a game company. During all those years we developed over 100 games. Especially in the last years we have mainly been working on Nintendo platforms, which is Nintendo DS, Nintendo Wii, before that on the Nintendo Game Boy Advance, but also on iPad, PSN and XBLA, so we're not just working for Nintendo, but it's our focus. In all those years we've worked with big IPs in the development cycle, companies such as Disney, Nickelodeon, Marvel, which were mostly for the kids type of games, movie games and things like that. But we work with many of the known brands in the industry. We also started on casual games, I think 7 years ago when there was the first Casual Connect in Amsterdam. It was our introduction to the casual games market actually. In all those years we have done a lot of casual games, and a lot of the games that we did were conversions for the known brands in the casual games market. I listed a few: Big Fish, PopCap, iWin, Mumbo Jumbo, Player X. So I think we covered most of the bigger known studios in the casual games area. What we have been doing is mostly retail games. And many people think about retail games, well, that's past, how can you still make money on that? But the funny thing is, for instance, when it comes to Nintendo platforms, in 2009 we said, well, this will be the last year that we're doing any game for Nintendo DS. Well, we are almost more than 3 years later, and we're still doing that, and we already have signed agreements to do DS development until late 2013. So even if people think the market is going down on retail, there is still an interesting part that is left, and we're jumping in that, and I think more can do that, and that's what I will explain a bit more about. So I will explain in this presentation why it's important to think about more, not just one platform, and look wider than that. And at least why you should, I see there is a missing L, be aware of multi-platform development even if you never consider it. I will explain a little bit about what we did and what the experience are with converting casual games to multi-platforms during the last years. And finally I'll give some information about how it works with how you have to deal with publishers if you want to go into the retail games, which is still interesting. Okay, so multi-platform games, and many casual games start just on PC originally, or now in the browser area, or on iPad, but the teams focus on just one platform and keep on developing that. Don't look wider than that. We think it's not a good idea. Previously, if it was to casual games in the early days, just the PC was the only way to go, except for PC. That was 90% of the market share, so that's where all the importance is. Right now, there are way more platforms to bring your games to, and there isn't not one platform that's best for all type of games. Each type of game has different platforms that works better, so it's always better to look at different ways of bringing your game to the market. So you should be aware of that, and what is really important when it comes to marketing and visibility, the more platforms your game runs on, the more reviews you'll get on the internet, so the more people are talking about the game, and the more visibility you get, well, that's visibility for the game on one platform can drive sales on another platform. A good thing about conversions is they should be rather easy to do. I write there should be, because we noticed that it's not always that easy, and if especially development teams or indie developers take a little bit more of paying a little bit more attention to that, it should be really easy. And that's also one part of this session. And one thing that many developers never think of if they even do not consider to bring their game to what other platform, because you're just a team of a few guys or just focusing on, they say, okay, our focus is on PC. And you have your casual game and it is very successful and it works well. You will be contacted by publishers for Nintendo platforms, for XBLA or whatever, and they ask you to sub-license the game to bring it to the platform. So even if you don't consider to bring your game to other platforms, if your game runs well, you'll get at a certain point, you will be asked to think about it, and that's something you should be aware of. So if you want to do a conversion, well, there are a few ways to do that. Well, simply the first thing is just do it yourself as a team. You can say, okay, now we're going for XBLA, so we get a license to develop on XBLA, and we're going to bring the game there. For many teams that are smaller or have a focus on other platforms, don't want to invest in that. So there are many other alternatives that actually are rather simple. One thing that we see a lot at this time is development teams partnering up. Development team A works on XBLA, development team B works on the iPhone, and development C works on the PC. And they team up together because they all have their experience on one platform and they share the content. So the team that has the experience on the iPhone builds the iPhone games, the other one on the PC. And that way, it is rather easy to bring your game to other platforms without having to jump into that. It's something that we do as well, and it really works. Simply said, if you want to bring your game to another platform, you can simply ask another developer to do that, but then in that case you normally have to pay for that, and the question is, do you want to do that? But sometimes if you discuss it with teams, they have quite surprising offers for games that they offer to do it on a way that you think, this is really interesting for me, but I'll get back on that later. And the last one, especially, that comes when a publisher sees your title as being popular and they want to publish it on another platform. They just get to you and they ask for, can you give me all the assets, and now I'll take care of a conversion to whatever platform it is. And that may be a very interesting direction for a development team that does not want to invest in any new development of their game on other platforms. And it happens a lot nowadays. So what to choose may depend on the kind of deal you're looking for and how you want to make money on that, and I'll get back on that a little bit later. So as said, we have been doing quite a lot of games on especially DS, 3DS in the last couple of years, and also, as said, of the big names, and also one of the, well, the not known, not the big AAA game developers in the industry, and a few things that we thought that were really surprising for us, and we think this should be rather logical, but it seems that it happened a lot. For all the games that we have been converting, I think only 2 had a game design document that was available, and I think we did 25 or 30. So that means about 10% of the casual games developers seems to create documentation, and that really was surprising for us. We used to work with publishers in the more traditional game industry. Well, if there is no game design document, you will not pass your first milestone and you will never get your game done. But in the games, in the casual games where a lot of smaller and indie game developments, there is no publisher involved. So they think, well, why should we create a game design document? But in our experience, it's good to do it internally because it gives you a guideline and keeps your costs effectively low. But more important, if you want to hand over the game or want to convert the game to another platform and have somebody else being involved, there is no documentation, and it's simple as that. And often the documentation is there, but it's just thrown away. And that's really strange to us. But the same thing is if a development team hands over a game to another developer to bring it to another platform, there is no documentation how it works. Imagine that the same game has to be adjusted by somebody in the same company, but is new because the original programmers left the company for whatever reason. Nobody will understand how it works. And it's, yeah, again, it's strange that that doesn't happen. And even with the bigger guys that you would expect that have everything sorted out, most of the time they don't. We saw also missing files. If there was a game, we were not even able to build the original game again because there were just missing files. We couldn't get it started, and that's really strange. And then it took the original team a week or something to dig it up. So it's really strange that that happened. Also, make sure that you have your assets, your 2D, 3D assets. Make sure you don't throw them away. We were asked to create a 3DS game last year, and the original game was pre-rendered 2D images, and we were asked to make them in real 3D. And then it turned out, in the end, that the original 3D files were missing. They were not able to find them. And that's really, well, ridiculous, because everything had to be redone from scratch, creating a huge amount of costs. And that's, yeah, that should never happen, in my opinion. Also, what we saw, many games, they were created as PC games, and they were, and that's a more technical issue, created as just PC. For instance, if there is a PC working on DirectX and there is DirectX code all over the game, then it's not easy to bring that over to an iPhone because you have to remove all the PC related code anywhere. And if you think a bit about it, you can do it way smarter. Also, we saw missing source code. We got the game and there was just source code missing and we had to reprogram it. That was the only way to get it running, and that was really surprising. So overall, even if the developer says, okay, we didn't want to go multi-platform, as soon as there is a publisher that say, I want to buy your license, I want to create a game, they're all happy to do that and they want to get some money. But if you want to be prepared for that, make at least sure that you have everything sorted out. If you prepare of multi-platform development, there are just a few simple things you have to think of, and many of them seems quite logical, but we noticed that people didn't take attention, spend or think about it. Different screen resolutions is of course an obvious one. An iPhone screen is smaller than a PC screen, so you have to be aware of that. Simple, but sometimes people forget about it and make the screen in such a way that it's almost impossible to reposition it, because then it will be too small or unreadable or unplayable, or buttons will be, when they are removed, you play slower and then the original gameplay gets lost. Another simple thing is if it comes, for instance, to a Nintendo DS, you have two screens. That's something that you have to be aware of, and then if your game is not prepared for that, it may cause some really troubles in getting the layout done. Also, every platform has different graphical capabilities. If you just focus just on that, and you work on a high-end PC or whatever you go for, you will know for sure that on any lower-end devices you have a huge problem in converting that. So you should be aware of that. Online features are very important that to consider. If you want your game to be playable on different platforms, and for instance you create it for an iPhone where you are always online, but if you go for an XBLA or a Nintendo, you should not be online all the time. So you should be aware that if your game doesn't need to be online all the time, be prepared for that. If you bring a game to one of the traditional console publishers like the Nintendo, Sony, or or Nintendo, Sony, or Microsoft, they have all these guidelines, and those guidelines you have to stick to them. There is no way you can, well, forget about that. For instance, you have to show certain screens at a certain position, like logo screens, license screens. There are all kind of guidelines you have to pay attention to. If you don't do that, you will not get your game approved, and you won't get your game in the market. If you consider to bring your game on other platforms, think about it up front. A simple thing that very important to think of is memory usage. If you create your game for PC, you have megabytes of gigabytes of memory, no problem. But if you want to bring it to a smaller memory system like an XBLA or even smaller a Nintendo DS, if the game always preloads all the graphic data, you will never be able to port it to another system because you simply won't have the memory to do that. And if you know that you should be aware of that, you can prepare for that to say, okay, we're not going to preload everything. We have to be aware of that. And if you do that on the PC, it doesn't matter for the game, but if you do the conversion, it will be way easier to convert the game. Something similar we saw with save game features. We saw games on PC that had a save game of 1 gigabyte where they just dumped everything. And if you try to do that on an XBLA or a Nintendo DS where you only have 512 bytes, that's kind of a problem. So if you want to prepare for your game to be available on different platforms, make sure that you don't use a gigabyte of memory, because all different kind of devices will not allow you to do that. Okay, so when you're developing your game, what do you have to do when you want to prepare for different platforms? First, it starts with a game engine. If you create your own game engine, make sure that it's a portable one. If you buy a game engine, make sure that the game engine runs on the platforms that you may want to support. For us, choosing a game engine is important to look, okay, what different platforms are supported by this game engine, and yeah, it's important to think about it up front. If you want to change it later, there is no way to do that. And especially if you buy a 3D engine or a game engine, you won't be able to change it if it's not supporting a certain platform. Also make sure that you always create and especially keep your documentation that is available. Any team creates documentation during the project, but just make sure that you do not throw it away, what normally happens. If you have to do something later on, you just have to have it. And the same goes for all the materials, artwork. If you're working with Maya or 3ds Max, make sure that all the original files are there. Do you working with plugins? Make sure that all the plugins are there. Do you work with some special tools? Make sure that all the special tools are there. If you don't do that, it's almost impossible to later on convert it. And normally, when a game is published on PC first, it takes 1 or 2 years before it's converted to the other platform. So at that time, maybe the plugin is not available anymore on the internet, and then try to get it done. So it's important to make sure that you keep all your things archived, and it seems simple, but it's very important. And when it comes to creating the game code itself, make sure that you always create it as platform independent as possible. So that you have, if this is the game engine, make sure that there is a small part is the game engine. Make sure that everything that's related to the platform is stick together in the game engine or in some abstraction layer. Do not use all the DirectX code all over your game, because you're going to introduce many problems when converting. And the same goes about memory and CPU usage. On a PC, it's easy to whatever CPU you want to use, there is. It will run anyway. If you want to do that on an iPhone or again Nintendo DS, which is the lowest end device, if the game is heavily using the CPU, you're sure that it won't run on such a system, and then you have to maybe cut gameplay features or make it easier, or change the game to make it run on that system. So if this happens, hey, there is light. Yes. So when you have your popular game and a publisher gets to you, what do you have to do? What do you want to do? The first question you have to ask yourself is, do I want to be involved in the process of bringing the game to the other platform? If your IP is the most important thing and you want to make sure that your IP is at the highest quality possible, you should be involved a bit. If you just want to make money, you shouldn't be involved too much. And the second question is, do you want to invest yourself in a conversion? If you talk to a publisher, they always hope you invest as much as possible. But they want your game, so you're the guy, you're the person that can make the rules, not them. The question is, what do you want? Do you want just royalties, or do you want to have a flat fee for that? When it comes to conversions, it's pretty regular that publishers just ask a flat fee. This is what we want to give you for the conversion of a game. Are you happy with that or not? But as I said in the beginning, the more attention you get for the game, the more important it is. So in my opinion, it's often simple to just give away a sub-license to a publisher, and they will make sure that the game is converted, get a flat fee. You know what you get. There's nothing you have to do for it. Just hand over the assets, and you can make additional money and invest that to create another game. If you want to be involved in royalty payment, okay, that's what publishers prefer. But then the risk is, how good are these publishers working? Do they do their job well? And that's always a little bit difficult, because you never know what important your game is for them. If they have 10 games and there is one doing best, they will put on the focus on that one, and running the risk that the royalties of your game will be lower. So it's always a big question, what's the best to do. When you're sub-licensing your game, make sure that you have approval rights, especially when other developers create a conversion of your game. They can really screw it up. I've seen things that the original IP holder would never have approved, but they didn't have any approval right, and the publisher just shipped it because they wanted to make money. In the end, the game didn't sell because the conversion was too bad. So it's very important to make sure, if you sub-license it, make sure that you have a final approval. If you don't do that, yeah, it can kill your IP, and that's the last thing that you want. So if you want to, if you have your own game and you want to bring it to another platform without a publisher, there is no publisher asking for you, well, you can go for two directions. You can try to do it self-publishing, especially on the internet. That's easy. But when it comes to publishing on XBLA, for instance, you have to be licensed publisher on XBLA, and that's not easy. And the same goes for if you want to publish it on Nintendo DS retail. You have to have a publisher license, and you won't get it yourself. So in this case, you need a publisher, and if you want to bring your game to that platform, you have to work with them. In this case, the question is, okay, how do you finance it? You can just create a conversion of the game and bring it to a publisher, or you can contact a publisher and try to get it financed. At this stage, getting games financed is not easy. Publishers, they want to get the biggest part of the cake, and they don't want to invest anything if they can, and they don't want to run any risk at this moment. That's how publishers are now. So that's the problem when you go to a publisher. And what we noticed that what really works is to do a revenue split with developers that do the conversion for you. You team up with another team, they do the conversion for you, so they do the actual work, your investment is low, and you split the revenues with them. In our opinion, that's the best way to get your maximum revenues and make sure that the other team is doing the best they can, because they are paid on revenues as well. But it's always a tricky question what to do, and it depends on the situation, but you have to think about it really careful. So that's basically what I wanted to tell today. So if you want any information, or if you ever consider something to be converted or want to know how we think about it, feel free to get in touch. And if there are other questions, feel free to ask as well.
Thank you, Ivo.
Welcome.
We have time for one quick question while we're setting up for the next presentation. Maybe I'll ask one question. Since you deal with so many platforms, I appreciate some are hard and some are easy and things are different, but if there's one platform that you would consider the hardest and most challenging to develop for, with one word answer, what platform would that be?
Good question. Yeah, there are
One word answer.
One word is difficult. If it's technically, it's a Nintendo DS. If it's how to deal with the platform holder, it's Sony. That good, short enough?
Good enough. Thank you very much.
Okay, no. Thank you.